This is the On Point of View podcast. I'm Jean, and each episode, Nick Whitehouse and I talk innovation and the trends shaping both the business and practice of law. You also hear from our community who are leading change every day. Follow along, join, and stay on point as the legal industry evolves. A very warm welcome to the On Point of View podcast. We have a very special episode because not only are we recording in person, but we are live at CLOC Global Institute Chicago. For those who don't know, CLOC is the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium. We've gathered thousands of legal operations professionals to come and meet and have conversations. And the goal of this podcast today is to bring the highlights and the conversations right to the fingertips of our community. We're going to do this with a range of voices. We have guests from Intel, ADM, State Street, Harbour, CEO of Onit joining us, and just in case one Kiwi accent is not enough, I am joined by my co-host, Nick Whitehouse, Chief AI Officer at Onit, to join in the conversation today. Before we get our first guests on, I wanted to talk to Nick a bit about just the highlights from CLOC, the conversations you're hearing. How are you liking CLOC Chicago this year?
Well, I would say that for a chief AI officer, this CLOC has been like a kid in a candy store. Everybody is talking about AI now, and everybody's kind of like caught that wave. I think some of the highlights for the sessions has really been, I think, grounding all this new technology in the reality of what legal operations people need to actually do to make it successful.
Yeah, I have found that everything is AI this year. It's kind of an unavoidable. The keynote speaker, we had Zach Cass, who was from prior OpenAI, but also if you look at the agenda, I'd say 4 out of 5 speaking sessions are about AI. And if it's not about AI, they're probably going to touch on AI. But what has been really nice, and this is what you're saying, is unlike maybe 2 years ago at CLOC, where I felt like everyone was very excited, drinking the Kool-Aid, but we hadn't really dived deep into these use cases. This year, the maturity of the conversation is just so much better. People have actually got some battle stories, they've got some learnings, they've actually tried a couple use cases, tried a bunch of vendors, and one of the better sessions I went to yesterday was a community conversation about what's AI hype and what's not, and the microphone was passed around and people shared the use cases that they had done.
What wasn't hype?
So we had a few examples of one lady shared that she had tried AI chat for legal intake and she wasn't prepared to roll it out because she was getting inconsistent answers for the same questions. So she's gone on this journey of learning, okay, AI is inconsistent, you can have alignment issues, and being very thoughtful to say, actually, I don't want to roll this out until I'm sure my users are going to have a good experience, because legal, it's a process to win their trust and to bring that change. Also heard people share that they really want to make sure they have a solid AI governance program in place before they roll out things like agents, because they really want the agents to be successful and here to stay. So yeah, really mature conversations down to garbage in, garbage out, and understanding that AI governance, AI structure is really important, through to, how do we actually train people and bring them along the journey?
Yeah, I'm hearing similar things from the clients, the chief legal officers that I've been talking to. I think the prevailing theme is that AI is dramatically speeding up transformation, or at least the experimentation of new technology. The challenge, I think, still is that you have to have good process, you have to have good data, you really have to be able to test these things well, and that may be a part of the legal operations kind of foundations that aren't necessarily that robust yet. Mm-hmm. So I think it's great to see so much of this AI now, but I don't think it is necessarily as straightforward as everybody's kind of like hoping it's going to be.
Yep, that is exactly it. And people are cottoning on. So I've heard folks say, the fundamental problem is thinking that AI is going to come and solve all your problems. It's just like the dream that your email inbox is going to be your legal ERP. And there's a lot of, I guess, lesson sharing about, do I go for a point solution or a platform and all of that. But maybe if we just talk a bit about the conference floor, the booth floor. So this is where we are right now in this podcast box. What are you seeing? Because I'm seeing, actually, no, you go ahead. What are you seeing on
Well, I think it's really interesting because if you've come to CLOC or you haven't, I can explain. Like, I've been to many, many CLOCs now, and you just go through these waves. And so for 2 or 3 years, everything was CLM, right? And now everything is AI. So when I'm looking around at the booths, they're very, very similar. I'm finding it hard to differentiate a little bit. And interestingly enough, there's not a lot of ELM, like enterprise legal management, spend management. All of that stuff is like not really represented here. So I think there's definitely these kind of fads that we go through in products. So that clearly tells me that that's where the market is at the moment. But I think it's very, very interesting. There's a lot of booths, and a lot of the kind of advertising on the booths is very much around removing that manual work, and I think that's the goal of everybody in this industry. So I think that's quite interesting. A lot of very energetic people. But
I don't know how they do it. Yeah. It's amazing. On your feet all day. Yep. I mean, I'm seeing the same thing. Everything is AI something, and you really have to go in as a buyer and discern exactly what do you do with AI, and
how are you different?
How are you different? Are you a point solution? Are you a platform? Are you an AI wrapper? Interestingly, there's been a bit of shade thrown at AI wrapper companies at the moment.
Who's throwing the shade at the AI wrapper companies?
Everyone.
Okay.
I mean, definitely at the AI hype, what's hype or not conversation. There was a bit of what's hype, and people say the AI wrapper companies aren't going to be around in 2 years. That was one of the statements, and that the folks are going to be able to do it themselves.
Believe that?
So I believe that there is value in the application layer, right? I think
like the usability, making it easy for somebody. Because adoption is such a big challenge for legal teams, legal ops, law firms. So you're talking about at that layer?
Yeah, I don't think there is no value in the application layer. And I think the challenge is if you're going to be very expensive, if you are going to be disconnected to the rest of the workflows and the data, there's a limit to how useful you can be. And we've got a guest coming on later who has worked on almost 60 different use cases in their business with AI, has bought a ton of point solutions, and he's like, now we're trying to get rid of them and figure out how to streamline into one place.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting conundrum, because if you look at the stats, you'll see that in-house teams often have to work with around 30 different applications to do their job. If you look at law firms, and that's obviously a different part of the market of what CLOC is, but law firms are 60 plus applications. And as you know, I come from a law firm land where I ran the IT and strategy for a large law firm, and that's exactly what we were dealing with. We had 300 different applications. And so I think what we're seeing is there's a lot of AI point solutions, a lot of interesting things, but I think fundamentally for any legal operations, you're still wanting to consolidate the amount of places somebody has to go and do work. And I think that is maybe something that's kind of been forgotten a little bit at this point in time as everybody's testing and trialing things and learning. But that application sprawl is a big challenge.
Right. I think the average in-house user has 30 different applications that they have to use, and the average law firm user has over 60, right? So which is insane. Interestingly, so you mentioned law firms. I went to a talk yesterday held by one of the firms, and there seems to be a trend of the firms going out using some of the foundation models and building their own solutions in-house, so assembling a team of AI experts, a center of excellence, instead of going out and buying a more generalist solution. Also seeing, even within legal corporate teams, a little bit more of a role reconfiguration, creating new centers of excellence and thinking about doing this yourself. Do you think that's
a valid trend? It's the way to go?
I think there are a couple of big things, right? We are definitely building our own models, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. I think there are some really key economical challenges around how AI is being used right now. I think there are other challenges for corporates, in-house teams, where adoption is going to be hard, like these new skill sets. So I think you're seeing this rise of forward deployed engineers, which I think is going to be a perfect role for the legal ops teams as their jobs evolve, right? Because a lot of this technology is right at like gunning for what are traditional roles. And so I already immediately see that there's value in having people in your organization who understand how to use AI, who can write good prompts, who can write skills, who understand how to connect things together and help you transition. So I think that is a really interesting new kind of wave. And I think that evaluating this technology is also another new sort of thing that has to happen. Benchmarks are one thing, but they're very easily abused by all models. And so being able to understand how you can scientifically measure to get that consistency, I think is very important as well.
Yeah, how to validate your AI for your specific use case.
Yeah.
So shifting a little bit, but still focus on the event. You've been to several CLOCs.
Yes.
For a number of years. And for you and I, at least, this is the first time CLOC has left our home ground of Las Vegas.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chicago or Vegas?
I like Chicago. I think the event, though, and the space, it's a little bit more intimate in some of the locations in Las Vegas, where you have the smaller meeting rooms, and I feel like that feels like a collection of professionals a bit more versus here where it's a bit more trade showy and a bigger event. So I think the city is nice. It's always good to get together with a lot of people, but I think the event is more intimate in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a fair thought. I mean, I do not miss walking through 10 minutes of casino and blackjack tables to get to the event to start off with. But I have to say, Chicago's a better city for me personally. The actual conference is a little... There's quite a few stages that are in the expo hall, which has made it a little bit harder to hear when you go to these sessions. But we know, rumor has it, we're going back to Vegas next year, and then we're going to go to Nashville. So it's going to be a little bit tiki tour.
All right, Nashville is the Vegas of the South.
Oh, is it?
So, it's just keeping with that thing. I think CLOC want to keep the party going.
Yeah. And we have the CLOC party tonight, although it's going to be hard to beat Flow Rider. I have to say that was just...
Oh, yeah. So this is, for everybody on the podcast, last year, Gene got on stage with Flow Rider. So,
I wasn't on stage, but I got to sing some lyrics, which I don't think was a great thing, but it was very fun. All right, well, do you want to talk a bit about the Claude announcement, Anthropic announcement? So yesterday, Anthropic announced that they are focused and coming into legal. And Nick, what's your reaction to that?
I think the Claude announcement is interesting. I think controversially, maybe crassly, I think it's a piss or get off the pot moment for legal. I think that you can't put your head in the sand anymore, that AI is going to be playing a huge part of how legal work is done. And very much like how software engineers have gone like wholeheartedly into using Claude and OpenAI to help with coding, I see that's going to definitely be the way legal work is going to be done over the next year or so. I think the challenge I see with the Claude announcement is that, they announced a lot of MCP connections, a lot of skills. I don't think it's a done deal. Like, I think there are a lot of headlines saying, like, this is going to disrupt legal tech providers completely. I just don't think it's a done deal. And a couple of reasons why. One, I'm still going to have to pay for all of these other products that I'm connecting Claude to. Like, there's no system of record there. There's going to be an MCP into Box. There's going to be an MCP into iManage. There's going to be an MCP into NetDocs and all of this stuff. I still have to pay for all of those, maintain all of those, make sure I configure and set all of those up. So I'm not reducing my burden, I'm adding to it, because I now have to manage these MCP connections. And what happens when those providers decide to put a toll charge on how much data is going through those? So a lot of things to think about there. Then the other one is the skills, and I think it's good that there are skills being written for legal. But we went through this when we did Review AI, when we built our own products. We created skill sets, we created contract templates and playbooks for clients and clause libraries for clients. But even though that was all laid out, it's still a lot of work for teams to go off and actually tailor that for their specific needs. So I still think that work is friction. So I think you end up having this great tool in Claude, but you still have all of this app sprawl, this burden to manage, these skills that you have to tailor. So I think that is still effort that is going to be hard. And it's not opinionated, right? Claude connections and skills are not an opinion on how you do your work and do workflow in a consistent manner. So I think that's something for people to think about. And I think it's also very interesting that they made that announcement here, like at CLOC, but they don't have a booth here. Yeah. So all of the other poor vendors here who've got their booths are now having to answer all these questions that Claude have asked of the market, right? And Claude don't have to be sitting here. Anthropic aren't sitting here asking the really nitty-gritty questions that a lot of people have, like what happens to my data? Where does it go? How do I pay for this? What happens with token usage, right? Do you have the data center capacity to do this, right? Where is my data actually going to be processed if you don't have the capacity? A million of questions that if you're a normal vendor, you're being asked, and they're like, just get to make this great announcement, get the good headline, and don't answer any of the real questions.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to make of this is, where do I start? It's like, okay, great. Anthropic has some legal-specific skills, legal-specific solutions. What is this in alternative to? And the first thing I thought is this a play against Microsoft Copilot and the fact that OpenAI and through Microsoft Suite is already embedded inside a lot of these legal teams, and Anthropic's really trying to be the model of choice for the legal domain. But okay, like how does this disrupt my current buying cycle, or how does this add to my current buying cycle? There's just so many questions out there. And also, what is the pricing? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think Claude is a very good model. I think we've seen it do great things. I'm a big proponent of it in software engineering, but over the last couple of months, it's not been as good as it has been, as they've run out of capacity, GPU and data center capacity. So I think there's a big, I understand the play, Claude wants to be everywhere, but the economics of this, they're not a profitable company. They're on track to be profitable, they say, right? But they're heavily subsidizing tokens at the moment. Yeah. And so I think one thing I think of as a chief AI officer is it's this normal kind of Silicon Valley process where you discount heavily to get the land, grab the land, and then you go through this process of enshittification, right? Which is, you tailor the service to be not so good at that cheaper tier, and you try to ramp up the cost. And you've seen it with Airbnb, you've seen it with Uber. You've seen these great disruptive technologies come in, and then over time change market dynamics, not necessarily in the best ways. So I think there's always risk there, but if you look at the investments being made by Anthropic and OpenAI, they're on the back of a target of $2 trillion of revenue. They need to make $2 trillion of revenue to pay for the investments that they're making, right? That's the bet that they're making at the moment. That's a huge amount of money they've got to make from somewhere, right? And it's not going to come from a $20 a month subscription.
Well, the signal is clear. Legal is definitely a space that the leaders in the industry got their eye on. Is definitely under the spotlight. But I think speaking of, that dynamic of some big players getting in, doing the land grab, and then potentially changing the quality and the pricing on us,
I think one of the important things is that there is choice in the market. And right now there is not a ton of choice because of the expertise, the data, and the just crazy amount of cost required and compute to build large language models that can compete. Obviously, there is also open source, which is great. Yeah. You mentioned you're building your own models. Talk to us about that and some of the thinking behind it.
I'll just add that not only is Anthropic providing choice, which I think is good, I think it's a signal that there's a problem to be solved in the market, and you can kind of trust that if you're going down, whether it's with Claude or any of these other providers, that's a legitimate problem that can be solved now. So I think that's important.
And the other actually quite important signal is we're heading towards domain-specific models and domain-specific solutions, right? Anthropic has come out and said, our standard generalized model is great, but really here's something, customized for your domain. And so I think that's one of the things that the market is going to start learning is that...
Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why we've been building our own models. So we've built Olava. The first version of that is focused on contracts. That's really what you're seeing from Anthropic, Legora, Harvey. A lot of that heavy lifting that they're trying to solve is in the contract space, whether it be contract extraction, due diligence, through to drafting and redlining contracts. And that's something that we've had a pedigree in doing over the last decade plus. And so we set about building our own model. And I'm really pleased to say that model kicks the butt of the frontier models, significantly smaller size. So the thesis that you need 2 trillion parameters to be able to solve a problem, it's just like trying to brute force a password. It's a huge amount of compute and effort for something that if you just knew the password, you wouldn't have to put that effort into.
It's like casting a net versus spearfishing.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And so our thesis and philosophy has been that we can do this at a high level of accuracy with a much smaller model size, which allows us to do that at a much more predictable cost, a cheaper cost rate for us, which is great. But for the market, it is also a way of us providing the ability to download and run these models in your own environment.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks for listening to the On Point of View podcast. Want to keep the conversation going? Join our community and connect with others working in legal innovation. On Point is free to join, and members can take part in peer groups, build their AI literacy, access practical resources, and join free CLE courses and webinars. Join the conversation, learn from your peers, and stay on point.